Why Tennessee and the rest of the SEC should be concerned about recruiting in the Big Ten. Big picture, macro view time. Coach Prime, by the way, trending on Twitter. I guess we pushed him up there. Brought to you by crafttreats.com. Let's get into that right now. So Michigan doing pretty well in recruiting. The top of the recruiting rankings are usually pretty much held for SEC teams such as Alabama, Georgia, recently LSU. We've seen some other teams get up close to the top. I'm talking top 5, not top 10 to be clear. But now Michigan atop the list. Why, Caleb?
So yesterday, Michigan picked up 2 big commitments. They picked up a 4-star Connecticut defensive lineman. Guys, is college football coming back in the Northeast?
No,
Gerard Smith is his name. He's a 4-star, 6'3", 265. So he's probably more on the defensive end, on the ends or on the edge rusher, but still big pickup. And then this is key for Michigan. If anybody knows Jim Harbaugh's system and how they run their offense, 4-star tight end Brady Prescorn is his name, out of Rochester, Michigan. He committed 6'6", 225. They also right now have a 5-star quarterback in the class, Jaden Davis, one of the best in the class. They have the number 1 class, and Ohio State has the number 2 class. Now, I want to be upfront about this. Alabama never really gets going until May or June. Everybody talks about Alabama struggling in April with their recruiting class, and then July hits and they have the number 1 class and they hold it for the rest of the time. That's usually how it goes.
And we know why, right? Because they're able to evaluate longer and they still have a great chance of getting the guy.
Yeah, exactly. They can spend more time on they can spend the time that Derek Dooley used to spend on evaluating players before he used to give out offers. But
he didn't.
I say that in a critical way, by the way.
Yeah, he didn't go see Von Bell in Chattanooga, which was a 90-minute drive. But yeah, don't get me started there. But yeah, I mean, Michigan up at the top, and then give us the rest of the top 5 according to
Michigan's number 1 on 247 Sports Composite. Ohio State's number 2, and they're a close second, by the way, because they actually have more 5-stars. Georgia's number 3, LSU's number 4, Penn State's number 5. Florida State, for the record, is number 6, so you don't get your second SEC team until, and this is a big concern for Tennessee. This is bigger than even Michigan. South Carolina, number 7 right now.
Right. And South Carolina, I think that Tennessee opened the door. I wrote about that. I think Tennessee opened the door, which led them to beat Clemson in a close game, led to a high publicity game against Notre Dame that they lost in the bowl game. But I think Tennessee opened the door for South Carolina. I don't think South Carolina is going to stick there, but I think the concern about the Big Ten is real. And here's why it's real, is because you have one solid coach in Jim Harbaugh, and then you have a recruiting machine. I don't think Ryan Day's nearly as good of a coach as his peeps would have you believe. But I look at those 2 programs, and I think they're always going to recruit at a high level. But they've got something else. It's all that TV cash coming in, Caleb. And again, if you didn't hear us earlier in the program, we said, no, that cash doesn't go directly to players, but you're allowed to go to another booster who, I don't know, maybe he was going to spend $10 million on the new edition. You tell him, we're good. Why don't you spend $9 million on the new edition and give $1 million to whatever it may be called, the Claw Club for the Wolverines. We officially named their new collective. That's how they'll handle things. And that will have an impact on how they play football in the fall. Most importantly, it will have an impact on how they play football in the college football playoff. So if you're an SEC fan, you want that new TV contract to kick in for the SEC like it did for the Big Ten, because that was a huge monster deal. You cover TV media and stuff like that better than I, Caleb. That number of going with Fox and different groups, that was a monster number that the Big Ten landed.
The SEC dropped a massive ball, and I keep saying it. The contracts are going to kick in at the same time, and at that point, the Big Ten is going to have a much bigger advantage. I don't, for the life of me, know, and maybe he is. Maybe we don't know anything. I can't for the life of me understand why Greg Sankey, as far as we know so far, has stuck in this contract with ESPN when that deal was made before Texas and Oklahoma were negotiating to join the SEC. You would think that Greg Sankey would come and the SEC would be able to come back to ESPN and say, all right, we got to negotiate a better deal here because our value is way bigger now all of a sudden with Texas and Oklahoma. But they're sticking in the same contract. And if that thing stays at $3 billion, I'm fine with being stuck with ESPN. I'm fine if you want to do one network. But if you're staying in the $3 billion contract that you signed before Texas and Oklahoma joined, when this thing goes into effect in 2024, and you let the Big Ten fleece you and get a $7 billion deal across 4 different networks, that's really, really bad management. And someone needs to call him out on that. And I'm sorry to be so hard on Greg Sankey. I don't give him a lot of credit for Texas and Oklahoma joining in the first place. They reached out to the SEC. I don't know a conference that would say, no, Texas and Oklahoma, you can't join us. And so I think that Greg Sankey, at the very least, needs to be going back to ESPN, and he's up that thing to $5 billion at a minimum. Otherwise, the Big Ten is going to be lapping the SEC in recruiting.
Well, I think you will get that number up, but I'm still a fan of going with one network, and you're forgetting ABC to a certain extent, just because I think most of us, 90% of us, still look at SportsCenter as the go-to for the recent highlights, and I think they will help create a Heisman candidate more so than Fox ever could. So, and CBS for that matter. I think that kind of pub helps your foundational growth of the amount of teams that make the college football playoff, the amount of players that win a Heisman Trophy. I believe that's worth a lot. Now, is it worth something right now? Not exactly, but I think it will be worth something. I would have stuck with ESPN and not gone with the conglomerate. Also, if I'm ESPN, I'm cleaning up when the games are kicked off, so everybody knows it's noon or noon 15, 3:30, 7:30. It doesn't need to be all over the place. We have these different kickoffs. I don't understand why, but I just think that SportsCenter and ESPN, the channel, outside of when the games are broadcast and outside of when the checks are cut, I think is a significant advantage over the Big Ten and their TV package.
See, I don't think so. ESPN's business model has been collapsing because the SportsCenter ratings, I'm sure if you've seen over the past 10, 15 years, have been tanking. The people don't go to SportsCenter for highlights any more than they go to MTV for music videos anymore. And I think that there's a big issue. There's so much cord cutting going on. Look, I think it's the SEC. This deal by the SEC is keeping ESPN afloat because sports cable packages turned out to be bad deals for the cable companies. They just did because there's cord cutting going everywhere. The SEC doing what they're doing is going to be enough for people like me, you, anybody that likes college football, which is a lot of people, everybody across the Southeast, to spend the money either through streaming or through cable to make sure they have ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News because they want to watch the SEC teams. I think the SEC had way more leverage in this negotiation. If they wanted to stay with ESPN, fine. They should have demanded more. They should have demanded way more than what they got. And it's one thing for Greg Sankey to get $3 billion. Big Ten comes and gets $5 billion. And then Greg Sankey's like, okay, we need to do $4.5 billion because we had a Texas and Oklahoma. No, he got $3 billion. And then the Big Ten went and negotiated a $7 billion deal. And the truth of the matter is what's happening right now is this is part of finessing. Part of, Dave, you play the stock market a little bit, I'm sure. Part of the stock market is guessing what other people are going to value, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah.
The Big Ten has accurately guessed that the networks are valuing TV market over brand size. They're wrong to do that. They're absolutely wrong to do that. But the Big Ten recognizes that the networks are stupid. So they're like, hey, we can still finesse the networks. And so they're getting way more money for a brand that's not as good. NBA's been doing this for years. NBA is not as valuable as what they get paid for. But they fleece the networks on their value all the time. And, I mean, that's brilliant business on their end.
Yeah, it's all about leverage, basically what it comes down to. Do you have that leverage You don't need leverage to eat a great product from Craft Treats. Just go to crafttreats.com. They have the chill pills with the CBD in them that will help with your pet's digestive issues. Also, they'll help with the anxiety issues. And don't forget about arthritis as well. That is, again, the chill pills are fantastic. Crafttreats.com. They've got non-CBD treats as well that you need to check out because your pet will love it. Use the promo code Off the Hook. That's the promo code Off the Hook for 20% off your purchase. And so you've got to check out crafttreats.com. You were saying compare Ohio State and Michigan. You lost me a little bit on your note there.
I was taught, yes, I think I want to know where you are on this, but look, Ohio State's a better job than Michigan if you just take it at face value, being in Ohio. But with Ryan Day at Ohio State, Jim, and what Michigan's been doing, and Michigan being Ohio State the last couple of years, are we in a position, given what we're seeing with recruiting, that Michigan is about to surpass Ohio State as a better job just because Ryan Day in danger of getting in trouble? Is he running the program somewhat into the ground?
Not into the ground, but he's average, and they thought he was the next wonderkind. They thought he was very special. That's why they didn't care about Greg Schiano leaving when Tennessee made a run at him. They really weren't upset about Urban Meyer, and they kind of facilitated that and greased the wheels. I've got a really good source at Ohio State. They loved Ryan Day. So is he running it into the ground? No, but it's just kind of stagnating a little bit. Here's why Michigan is a real threat to be one of the top recruiting teams in the nation and will win some battles against SEC teams like Tennessee, Alabama, and more. It's because Jim Harbaugh can't get a job in the NFL. He's tried his hardest, but he can't get a job in the NFL. So what does that mean? That means he's going to be at Michigan for the foreseeable future, and he's going to continue to build something there. And they're making waves in the college football playoff, as we saw last year. And I'm just telling you, he is going to continue to make waves in recruiting. That's not going away anytime soon, Caleb.
I agree. I think Michigan is I've said for years, Michigan's one of the more overrated jobs in football. I just don't think it's that good of it. They have half a national championship the last 70 years or whatever in college football. And that was the one they split with Nebraska in 97. And I have a feeling Nebraska would have beaten them had they played head to head. But I would say that Michigan, I think that with Jim Harbaugh there and Ryan Day keeping the program stagnant, I think you're going to see Michigan be able to get into Ohio a little bit more often. So beyond the NIL and the money and the name of Jim Harbaugh, Michigan can get into Ohio and Pennsylvania maybe a little bit more often and get some recruits there. Because Pennsylvania is still a good football state too.